I was originally born in, I originally came from Ethiopia, which is East Africa, and then for college I went to the US in Texas. I got my associate in science and biology. Then I morphed into architecture, got my bachelor's and my master's in urban design and architecture. So today I'm going to show you a little bit about some of the struggles, problems with urban designing, and then I'll show you a couple of projects I did, projects I involved in, and then some of my artworks, and then if we have time I'll show you a couple of more projects a couple of more projects I did in my firm at BOKA Powell in Dallas, Texas. Oh. So this one is just to kind of start off the conversation about designing and building. You know, we learn from natures. You know, one thing you get from these pictures is how the animals kind of start, you know, building their own houses with local materials. You see the bird using green, what's already there. Same thing with other pictures, and the ants using local materials to build their nest and houses. This is a project by Francis from Burkina Faso. He uses brick and local materials to build some of the clinics and schools that are needed in the rural area of Burkina Faso. So I like one of his projects because the way he used it is he uses local people, very less technical, so the brick laying and then the roof is what makes it different. So this is another clinic by him. Same thing, everything else is like you kind of see the facade kind of matches with the building, and then the roof is what makes it different from the other projects. This is a different project by Mass, as another firm. They use wood and different way of laying the bricks so you can create sunlight to enter the buildings. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with rammed earth. This is, there's been using it for a while, but it's a new movement now to combine old traditional way of building versus, and also using new technology. So rammed earth is pretty much what it does is you use concrete, about 10% concrete, and then you use mud and clay, and then animals waste. You create a form to it. So this kind of shows you just a diagram of how to make it. Once you have your supports on both ends, you put a little bit of concrete and then a bunch of soil. You compact them on the ground, and then you press them so they can compact. So if you have about 10 meters long, that will take about 50% of it. So it'll be 5 meters. So that compression make it like a stone at the end when you take off the supports. So you're pretty much trying to create a stone, but in more technical way. So, you know, you guys familiar with how stone works? And stone is over clay, and then over time with carbons, it becomes hard rock. So this one is pretty much the same thing. You just multiply the speed by adding concrete. You create the carbon effect. Then the compacting also creates it to compact, and when you take it off, it'll become very strong. So the easy thing is very easy. The only thing you need is just the mixtures and then the compacting. Once you've done that, anybody can do it. And then the beauty about that is you can get different kind of finishes. It can be modern. It can be used in rural areas. So it's quite works in both directions. So this is some of the projects in rammed earth. The finishes over time can vary, and also can get a finish, the details to it. that will combine with the ground. This is similar concept, but a little bit more wild. So from here, I'll jump into some of the projects in some of the famous buildings in Ethiopia that uses local materials. So majority of them are made out of one rock beside this guy. This is a palace for King of Gondar, Fasilides. But this one is a church. It's made out of one rock. It's Lalibela, and they carved it into the out of the mountain, and then they digged into the inside. So what you're seeing over there is one rock, and it's built in 11th century. This one is a monolithic obelisk, but it's also one rock. It's mimicking high rises and skyscrapers back then in the 3rd century. All you're seeing are windows and doors, and it goes up to 80 meters, I think. This one is actually recent. It's 2015, but it's very similar to the 11th century of method of creating churches and monolithic buildings. So urban designing works well with not just an architect who can work with urban designing. You need the city to work with you, the government to work with you. Everybody needs to work with it. But the main goals are have a big concept. What's the vision? What do you want to build? And then you have zonings and master plans, which all work together at the end. And then depending on the local rules, having a developer helps you develop the site. So it could be a private or a public sector that can take a site and then develop it to be a better master plan. So proper zoning. Zoning can be residential zoning, it could be commercial zoning, agricultural zoning, educational zoning. The reason having that is you don't want to farm agricultural area and then high rise right next to it. That will cause you a problem. So having to separate and somehow these different entities will help the city grow much faster and people interact. So, and then there's some occasions where you can combine, like it could be a multi-purpose building. On the bottom floor you have residential, and the upper floor, on the bottom floor it could be commercials, where restaurants and stuff, and the upper floors can be either an office or residential areas. A mixed-use project, pretty much. So for the city to grow, you need infrastructure first thing. Residential building, education, park and landscape. It's being from Ethiopia, I know a little bit about the problems between not reserving land for landscape or a park is the last thing a city will worry about it. You have conjunction of buildings and apartments and condos, but the landscape and having an open area is the last thing a lot of city officials will consider. But having that will help prosper the city. Hospital, clinics, and other infrastructures. The more the city grows, the more you need to build more infrastructure. It could be the road growing. So first time you build a road, you need to have a 100 years plan or a 50 years plan to expand it. So as the city grows, you need to have infrastructure in hold so you don't have a problem later on. Offices, police stations, all these different entities that will help grow a city. Retails and entertainment, of course. So this is an artist's rendering of an ideal place to live. You kind of can see all the residentials and the office kind of working together in the front, And on the background, you kind of see the landscape. And then right after that, you see the residentials and the offices. So having the landscape right in the middle kind of leaves the city to kind of stabilize the populations and to function right. Of course, we know Washington, D.C., they have a big plans on landscape. You kind of see how it stitches together the left and right in the front of us. London they didn't consider that, but they use the water feature as kind of a way to kind of separate that issue. Same thing with New York with Central Park. This is to show you having sustainability in our mind kind of helps us with, when the city goes up with population, there's health risk, and if city is not built properly, there is mudslide and other kind of problems that will later on kind of come and affect a city. Carbon is also another big problem, especially in my homeland, Ethiopia. This is some of the UN habitat suggests that based on efficiency, comparative, urban, legislative, proper urban planning, design, adequate financial for projects. So projects can having a master plan helps as if the financials is not there, having the vision of a bigger master plan, it can be built by phases. So everything doesn't have to get built right away. Also, the environmental, some of the stuff I talked about, mudslide, outbreaks and disease, malaria is also famous in Africa, and common disease. So this was another project by MASS that also worked with the site. So in some countries, we have a very big topo. So people tend to build away from the topo, and they find a flat land and to build it. But you don't actually have to do that. You can work with the site and have it work with supports and retaining walls so that they don't have mudslide and other nature causes. I put this in here because I kind of like how they play with the brick and bring in daylights into the building. So from here, I'm going to show you one project I started off but never finished. I thought it might fit this discussion. So this is studies I wanted to do about back home in Ethiopia. What we're having a problem is more people coming from rural area to the city. And then the city, because the city was not prepared enough for that many people to immigrate into the city, it causes so many problems. No plan on the roads, or people build houses here, the next guy builds house here. So that made it congested into no layouts at all. So recently, I think about last year, we had a mudslide that causes a lot of injuries and a lot of fatalities that causes the city and the people more sad. So this is just some of the photos I found in the same areas. And the other problem you have, this is pictures from back home, is waste. So the more people come in, the most waste is going to be. And then people need to take their trash out. If there's no proper place for it, and you're going to have this problem. So what the government tried to do is collaborate with China and other resources to build buildings for residentials. I don't know if you see any problem with that, but you see the difference between from that road up and road down. You see a big difference. So what they did is we need a solution for this many people. So just build us a house. We don't care. Just for me, I see this. I see disaster. I see a problem. This is temporary problem. Instead of working with a master plan, or have some way to the builders communicate, it looks very not well thought of. For a person that lives in this, I'm very sad to be living in there. I mean, it solves the quick problem, but over time, it's a problem. I don't know if you guys have it here, but back home, these buildings are done quite rapidly. They're not well thought of. Some of them fall off. The foundation is not strong enough. And if I live in one of the houses in here, I'm not getting a lot of sunlight because it's all blocked by the building right next to me. So what I did, this one is not finished, but I wanted to show you because some of the stuff I studied at school and some of the stuff I feel like it's a proper way to solve the issue. So I'm going to show you, but this is an area in the city called Kirkos. So I don't know if you can guys see this guy right here. That's a market. And then right next to it is a church. So the church was the first one that got built. But within 10 years, all this stuff happened. And there was some urban planning here on the edges, but right in the middle of it, it just got lost and people didn't care. The government has so many issues, so they don't have time to deal with this. So for me, I started with identifying the major roads. So all the red you see are highways and major streets that connect you to another city. The green one on the top left corner you see is a railroad station, and you take a train to go to a different station, a different city. So from that, you take, not completely destroying the existing street, but taking away from the street and making it work with the site and connect it with the main street. Not like every houses are connected to the main street. You don't want that. You want to limit the way you enter from the main street to the roads. So I thought about having maybe 4 main streets that connects to the main street, and the rest of them are, you have 2-lane cars on each side. The orange one you see, maybe it's 4 lanes of lines of road. So the yellow will be 2 on each side. The orange will be 4 on each side. So this one gives you the traffic to flow easily, maintain the traffic impact, and then have less traffic input. So Ethiopia is well known for car accidents. Typically, about 120 people die each day with car accidents. So the roads are not well organized. So having to limit the roads, but making them wider, have it to give them an access to the people, helps a lot, maintains the city, it keeps it clean, and then your sewage lines and your electrical lines will be easier access from that. So it solves so many problems, but it never get well planned, or you suggest to the city or the government officials, maybe they don't see it right now. It doesn't, money is not there, but later on, that's a 10 years difference. Like I told you guys, it's 10 years. You could have done a lot better than this. So having to prepare early on helps the city prosper in the future. So from that, I took how do we zone it? So the green can be an office, the yellow, the blue can be residentials or a multi-purpose buildings. And then on a red can be housing for residentials. So this one, so all that small dot you're seeing are, maybe it's about, that big by that big. So a house is 1 person just with a bed. But having a proper design building, for instance, this one right here, it's 2 buildings, 2 residential. So this guy gets his own enough space, a corridor for the hallway, and then on a bedroom on the other side. So having a courtyard right in the middle of it with a green, it could be parking, and then the outskirt can be a living room. So I mean a living area for different people. So that's the concept right in here and here. So what you're seeing on the top is a residential with a landscape. So that landscape can help maintain, if this is a residential, they can share this. If this is a residential, they can share having that nice landscape. And this can be a multi-purpose office. So the white one you're seeing are offices. The gray one you're seeing are either surface parking for the cars, or it could be a garage, depending on how many people you have that office being used. We can't avoid cars. Cars are always going to be there. So in America and the US, every city is trying to eliminate the car, how many cars you have, and you want more pedestrians to walk. In Africa, we don't have that problem, but eventually we're going to get there. So having space for the cars helps in the long run. The other project I'm going to show you is a project in the east of my city. It's a church. I was called in once the project got developed. I called to help in with the church and the students. So they have about 150 students. The church kind of maintain some of the students and teach them some programs. So it's in a rural area, so they don't have the city. They don't have a real connection with the city. So all the people live in a farm, either farmers or they just help serve the church. So this one was done later on with metal roof and clay mud on the walls, but it just leaks water, and the amount of people you have there that was too small for them. So what we did is under the church on the site, we found this rocks. It's a blue rock, so it was quite unique, and we wanted to use that. So we used that we used that stone. We designed some of the schools, some of the living rooms, living areas, common places, and a gate, an indoor and outdoor cafeteria. So this is some of the design planning. So right now it's in construction. You kind of see the stones as local stone. The only thing you see is concrete is what we got out from outsource, and that's two levels residential. For the bottom one will be for the old people. The upper one will be for younger guys. This one on the left you're seeing is a cafeteria, the outdoor cafeteria and the indoor cafeteria. And on the left is a place for the priest and the teachers and some of the officials will live there. The other project I started is designing using wood and grasses for the roof. So similar stuff I see here, you guys use. But the concept is like a bamboo. So bamboo is strong enough like wood, but you can bend it. It's easier to bend. So structurally, without using concrete or other foundation, you can kind of use the force of the bamboo or the wood to kind of create a foundation for the building. So what you're seeing on there is kind of the forces when you bend wood, how it forces the wood. So all the reds are pushing up and down. So you need something to tie that back. And then the blue kind of ties it back, so the arch kind of helps it. So what you're seeing is different kind of length of the wood we're planning to do, the bamboos, and then you tie it back together and structurally will force itself and maintain without any kind of concrete or other support. When it rains, it collects the water, drips it down, and then on this left, two lights, on left and right, the plan was to expand. So this is like a community gathering in the school. So what it does is over time, as it grows, the water can be collected and can be reused for different kind of uses for the water. So that's kind of gives you an idea that the one we just looked at is the middle one, and the two left ones are the student housing and classrooms. So that kind of gives you an aerial view, how the water is going to be collected with that roof plan, and then it goes down to a gutter, and the water is collected into a big tub. So the green one you're seeing is kind of used it as a corridor. That's what it's going to look like. So it's basically bamboo wood. Sometimes you show this to a client, they get scared to say, how is this going to be stable? So this is an example that's done in Thailand. And then actually this one is in Kenya, I believe, yeah. So it's wood, and then you finish it with clay on the top. And then the other thing I'm going to show you is some of my artwork. I got in here because there was a competition with Daniela, and then there was about 100 entries. And then from out of the 100, I was fortunate enough to be, I got the first place. What I did is the concept was to combine New York and Lesotho. So I wanted to create a mother figure because the mothers always kind of nurture you, and they are kind of the protectors of the family with the kids. So I wanted to kind of have that image, create a mother figure, and then that looks down to her kids, or that shows love. So in the art, it's kind of hard to express that, but what I try to do is the facial expression kind of gives you that look. So Lesotho, how the hairdress, the fabrics you guys wear, and the headset. So I start with a sketch. I don't know if you can see it on here. And then try to find different kind of people, then came up with a face. And then on the background, because this is going to be hanging on the wall, there's one of the given was not to have more than 7 pounds, I believe. So this was trying to limit the weight. So I cut it in half. On the background, I have to have some kind of relation with the New York. So I use the background as a New York site on the map. And then from that, this is what I did. So you see the blanket kind of covering her. She's holding her hand. Hand is kind of showing expression for love. You holding your heart, this kind of shows you the love. And the covering is kind of protecting her kids. So from New York, she's looking toward Lesotho. So if you look at it from New York map, Africa is here, so she's facing this way. That's what it should look like. So this is some of the other stuff I did. The obelisk I showed you earlier, the skyscraper, that was mimicking the skyscrapers pretty much 1,000 years ago, before other skyscrapers. So I kind of like being an architecture, I kind of admired that. The other ones is walia, is another animal found in Africa. And then I was asked to do a coin. This is a coin in 18th century. I mean 19th century, 1892. It's King Minilik. We know Minilik from one of the kings that was determined not to give Ethiopia to the Westerns. So he fought through the wars, and a lot of Ethiopians kind of admire him. So that was one of the coins to dedicate to him. It was done in at the end of his lifetime. So it's hard to find that the coin is about that long, and then what I made is about 60 centimeters, I think. If we have time, I can show you some of the architecture project I did in my firm. And then you fill that wood frame, the hole, with concrete. So over time, after about 5-10 days, you lift that concrete up, and then you create all the walls. So you miss home, you go to vacation 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, after 2 weeks, you come back, you see a new building all the way done. It's a quicker way to build a building, and it's more functional because the concrete kind of helps stitch together all the buildings. Once they're done with that, they come in, they put the steel frame, and they'll be done within about 6 months. It'll be complete. One thing I did on this design is we concretes like this needs this leg. So each piece you're seeing it's on by itself. So on the ground it's made by itself, then it gets lift off. So you need this leg for it to support. They also want it to look more. It's kind of hard because you need that to kind of support the concrete. But this client wanted to make it more glossy, more gloss on the building. So one trick I did is I set back the leg about 2 inches. So there's a glass on top of it, so it will hide the concrete. So this is some of the details. Once the wall is there, you put in the steel, then the concrete kind of stitch with the steel and concrete. On the ground, you set it back about 60 centimeters, and then you fill it with concrete, and you never see the bottom. But the only support for this wall is here and here. So I don't have to dig. I don't need any support right in the middle of it. So that's another way. That's another trick for not to scale up the price on the projects. Is you put 2 foundations for the column, we call it tilt wall. So for the tilt wall to stand, and it will support itself. So this is in the process of it, and then that was the finish. So you would never see the legs, but the legs are there behind the glass. So I don't know, maybe you see it a little bit in here and here, but it's a nice trick to hide the concrete block, the concrete. And that was it. And then this is another project I was involved in. This was in China. It's called Zhan. It's an outskirt from the main city. But I was asked to do a mall and residentials, and our firm kind of collaborated with another firm because the project was very large. They wanted a residential, they wanted mall, they wanted office space, they wanted a big green space. And this is near the airport, so people getting off from the airport can come in and use this space. So this is some of the design. I should have showed this first, but from here is what we designed and got to that place. I think that's all I have. If you have questions, comments.